Hi, everyone. We're going to get started in a few seconds. I'm just waiting for a couple more people to show up. Perfect. So, hi, everyone. My name is Sophie, and I'm part of the customer success team based in Toronto. Thank you for taking the time to join us for today's New Trip Publisher for Existing Users webinar. Before we begin, I want to remind everyone that this webinar is designed for users who are used to using the old Trip Publisher interface, not for users who have only ever used version 1.2, which is this one. If you have only ever used our new version, we have a few other webinars that would be better suited for you, such as our introductory webinar held every Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, or our live Q&A held every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. If you have previously used the old Trip Publisher, then this is the right webinar for you. Today I'm going to help you navigate the new Trip Publisher interface to show you where you can find all of your favorite features and some new functionality. Additionally, I'd also like to encourage everyone to ask questions as they arise in the chat room, not in the Q&A section. So I'm just going to pop a quick message in here. Since the chat log is recorded, if there are any questions that require some additional follow-up after this webinar, your questions will be saved and I can reach out to each of you individually. So now let's get started with our walkthrough. We're going to begin with an initial comparison of our dashboards. In the old Trip Publisher, the dashboard was laid out in a vertical view. This means you had to continuously scroll up and down in order to access your trips, any trips shared with you, and your email API activity. With the new Trip Publisher, we have switched to a horizontal view, so you can quickly tab through the different types of trips. So I can tab from My Trips to Trips Shared With Me to Company Trips incredibly quickly. Similar to the old Trip Publisher, we have a series of tabs at the top of the screen for larger categories. So this includes your vendors, your library, your company, and where to access support. You can also easily filter through all of your trips by clicking on some of the handy icons up here in the top right-hand corner. To compare, let's first go back to the old Trip Publisher and look at how we could filter trips in the old version. In our legacy version, to access recently viewed trips, you needed to click the Recently Viewed tab beneath the Dashboard tab. In our new version, so I'm going to tab back over, your recently viewed trips can now be referred to by clicking this icon right here, which is neatly contained in the same toolbar as your other icons and tabs. Filtering your trips based on keywords and status has also become much easier with the new Trip Publisher. In the old version, so I'm going to tab back to that, you first needed to scroll down to the appropriate category, such as My Trips, or tab over to Company Trips by clicking this button, and then apply your filters in the keyword bar. So if I clicked America, that's how I would be able to filter. In our new version, if you need to perform a search, all of your previous search options are still available under the filter icon, which is again neatly positioned in the top right-hand corner for easy access. Select My Trips, Trips Shared With Me, or Company Trips based on what you want to search. Again, as you can see, the emphasis is on a horizontal one-screen platform. It means that you can still see everything in your dashboard while filtering through your trips in this right drawer. Just a moment. In the new version, as we're currently exploring some of the icons up here in the top right corner, you may also have noticed this messaging icon. This is where all of your flight notifications and messages can now be found. Your notifications are still at the top. We've just switched to a messaging icon rather than a bell icon as per the old interface for a bit more clarity. Now that we've looked at the features at the top of the new trip publisher, let's start taking a look at everything contained in the left-hand navigation menu. Just like you could access your booking inbox from the dashboard before, I'm going to tab back and select my booking inbox, which is right under dashboard. You can now access it from the left-hand navigation menu in the new version. Of course, you can always access your booking inbox from within your trips, but you can also access it from this left-hand navigation menu. In the old trip publisher, you had to click on your initials to access your account. Options such as your account, your preferences, and so on. So I had to click these and then select profile or preferences and so on and so forth. Now, in the new trip publisher, they are located at the bottom left-hand side of your screen under your name. Clicking on this reveals a drop-down menu with all of your account options, such as My Account, Preferences, Plans, etc. Having the full name displayed rather than just your initials is great for users who may have several accounts, such as assistants. Now let's try to create a trip and really begin to explore where some of your favorite features are located. So let's go back to dashboard. We're going to start by clicking the Create Trip button in the right-hand side and filling out the required information. So I'm just going to give this a name, European Adventures for the Smiths, and some dates, Create Trip. Previously, let's go back to the old version, the trip publisher had a 5-step workflow, so let's enter one of my trips. And almost all of the components were housed in various locations. In step 2, documents and attachments coming in step 3, but any ability to review only coming in step 4, along with the calendar. Now, in the new version, you can create your trips in whatever way you choose, as all your options are available to you from the beginning. I can review my work at any time and even publish at any time, so long as I have at least one segment, without needing to tab from step 2 to another step. If you find yourself not sure where to look, it's helpful to think of the left side of your screen as where the ready-made content is housed, this being bookings in your inbox, tour itineraries, destination content, and a calendar that is automatically created as you work. And anything you want to generate within Umapped, you do so with the add icon on the right side. So this is for content that needs to be created. Let's start by exploring everything in the left navigation menu from within this trip. The first option in the menu, under your trip button, is the booking inbox. This is similar to the one that you can access from your dashboard, but here the only option is to add to the trip you're already in. This is also where you can import a PNR from a GDS such as Sabre Tripcase, Galileo, Apollo, or WorldSpan. So let's quickly import something. Let's do Flight City 2020. Fine. Next is suppliers. These were previously housed under tour operators in step 2, but now they are here, easily accessed and recognizable by their logo. The operators you can import via PDF are also here in the PDF Upload tab. Destination content follows that, which includes AFAR and W Cities guides. This is also the place where you'll find the option to import pages as notes right into your itinerary. So let's import a page from Barcelona. Perfect. And there we go. So let's close that. Beneath that, supporting documents is where you can include your own content from your document library or PDF and Word attachments. You can also add a document in Content from Library and attach your own files in File Attachments. So let's quickly attach a file. Rather than being contained in step 4, like previously in the old trip publisher, you can now access the calendar from this navigation menu. The calendar populates as you add content to your trip. You can even change the dates of segments by dragging and dropping them. And I'll demonstrate this by going into one of my other trips, such as Italian Sojourn, clicking on calendar, and then moving around one of these hotel segments. And back. The last option in our left-hand navigation menu is Trip Settings, where you can come to view your company branding, your audit log for a list of actions, and even where you can edit trip information or duplicate your trip, which you can do by clicking the ellipses right here. Previously, in the old trip publisher, let's go back here, you would have had to go all the way back to step 1 to view your audit log at the very bottom, and then back to step 5 to view your branding options if you are working with a collaborator. But these have now all been grouped into the same location as they all fall under the purview of settings. Now let's go back to the new trip publisher, and let's go back to our trip proper by clicking on Trip at the top of the navigation menu. If you ever forget how to return to your trip, remember that the little globe icon next to Trip symbolizes your home base. Thus, clicking on your home base will take you home to your trip. The last way that you can add content to your trip is by using the add icon right here, located at the bottom right corner. This is for bookings you want to create in Trip Publisher, as well as note components like trip summaries and insurance information. Let's quickly go back to the old Trip Publisher and see how we were able to add content previously. In the old version, you had to go back to step 2 and select Add Bookings to add your content. And each individual segment, such as a flight, took you to another page where you would then have to add all of the booking information. For example, when adding a flight in the old Trip Publisher, you were taken away from your trip proper and brought to a page where you could add your flight information such as airline codes, departure airlines, arrival times and departure times, and any other relevant information. In the new Trip Publisher, so let's tab back, when adding a booking from the add icon, you're never taken away from your trip proper. Instead, let's select accommodation. A right drawer will open, prompting you to enter your segment information. Again, the emphasis here is on a one-screen experience, so that you are not jumping from screen to screen when adding content. So let's quickly add the Cavalieri, Waldorf Astoria, just to demonstrate this. Perfect, and then add to trip. Once your segment has been created, if you ever need to add or change any information to your segment, I'm going to close this. You would just need to scroll down to the segment itself and then select View Details. From this right drawer that opens, you have a variety of sections that you can modify or add to, depending on the segment type. In this accommodation segment, I can add room information, pricing, and any other additional details that I'd like to include. Again, this is all done without leaving my trip proper. You can also add new vendors to your library this way, but now you use the photo icon in order to do so. Let's go back to our trip. At the top of the trip, you can edit your trip details from the banner at any time by clicking on the pencil icon. Or merge this trip into another trip by selecting the Merge button. Some advisors aren't sure where to go to manage their travelers or collaborators without a step 5 option. But just like with merging and editing trip information, travelers or collaborators can be managed at any time from this share icon right here. This will take you to both of these areas. And just like with everything else, you can use the preview icon to preview info and delete. Right, so let's go back. So over the course of this webinar, we've navigated where all of the most common features of Trip Publisher are housed in our new environment. As you can see, we've made the design much more compact so that we have room to grow and add even more functionality that advisors have been asking for. We know that these new changes require some getting used to, so with that, we're going to move on to the Q&A portion. I would like to encourage everyone not just to ask questions about what they've seen, but anything that they've struggled with so far in their experience with the new Trip Publisher, or anything that you're curious about. For anyone that can't stay for the Q&A portion of this webinar, thank you so much for your participation. Hopefully now that you have a little more confidence with navigating the new Trip Publisher, but if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to our support team at any time, and I will also be sending out a follow-up email with a link to a recorded version of a webinar. So if there are no questions, I can quickly also demonstrate in the new Trip Publisher how to add content from your library and how to create vendors, as these are very common things that people do. Okay, so let's go into the Rome and Paris adventure. Now there are two methods of including content from your library within your trip. The first way, as per the demonstration before, is to select destination content and then click on Add from Library. This allows you to add a page from your library into your trip proper. So if I wanted to add a page from one of my Barcelona documents, I could add, let's add Eating in Barcelona. So I would select Copy, go back to my trip proper, and you can see that that page itself has been added into my trip itself. To add an entire document into my trip, I would need to go into Supporting Documents, Content from Library, and then select Add Document. From there, I just need to key in a keyword, such as Barcelona, and then click the check mark to the checkbox to the right of whatever document I wish to include, and then click Add Document. Now, this won't be contained within my trip proper, so if you have any travelers that wish to access this full document, let's go into the web view. As per usual, let's just let this open. They will need to go into Documents in order to access that full document. 1 second, there's a question. Is it possible to import a full PDF itinerary from Travel to and then edit it? From Travel to, let me just quickly check if Travel to is still in our supplier upload. So PDF upload, Travel to, yes. So in order to upload a PDF from Travel to, you would need to first go into Suppliers. So it's the third option in the left-hand navigation menu. Then from these two tabs, click on PDF upload, choose the PDF type. So I generally think that you have to click on Travel to Itinerary PDF, although play around because I'm not 100% sure what the distinction between Travel to PDF and Travel to Itinerary PDF is, but there is a distinction there. So add your document. I don't have one on hand, but upload it using the Upload a File button. Select which of the two you'd like to try, and then click Upload PDF. Actually, I might have a Travel to Itinerary in this computer. Just give me a second to check. That might help. Okay, let's try this. I think this one actually is a Travel to Itinerary. There we go, so success. I'm going back into my trip proper. And as anything from this Travel to document, which includes some flights and other things, since it's all been added to my trip itself, I can edit any of these segments by selecting View Details. So you always have the option to edit anything that's been added to afterwards, as we've parsed all of the information from this PDF and added it as segments. So if I wanted to remove billing info, as per what you were saying, I could, let's see if the Sofitel has any billing info. I would select view details. If there was pricing, I'm just going to quickly add and then remove pricing. So let's say 1,300 update. So if there was a pricing included within this booking, it would show as pricing and then available. By clicking on that, I could see what it was. And then this little trash icon right here gives me the ability to delete all that pricing information. Perfect. So if there are no more additional questions, I'm just going to briefly show also how to add a vendor to your vendor library. And I'm going to show how to do so from within a trip itself, since it's a little bit different as previous. So let's go back into Rome and Paris Adventure. And then let's create a segment for a hotel that doesn't exist. So I'm going to say my personal hotel. So this is going to be a vendor that doesn't exist within my vendor library. So let's add a couple dates and then add it to my trip. Perfect. So this is the segment for my personal hotel. Let's just find it right there. And if this was a hotel that I wanted to add to my vendor library because it didn't already have a vendor profile associated with it, I would click on this little camera icon just to the right of my hotel name. And this allows me to add my vendors, so I can add in the name, the address information, any contact and description info, such as an email, website, Facebook, so on and so forth. And then I would click save. So let's add some random information. Just so that I can show how to add this. So by clicking save, my personal hotel has now been added to my vendor library. And we can check that by going to vendors, selecting an accommodation, keying in the name of that hotel, searching, and you can find it right here. And then I can always edit any of the information within or add some photos later on by selecting view details again, and then either the pencil icon to change any address or contact information, or the add photo button in order to add any kind of photo to this vendor. Perfect. So if there are no more questions, I'm going to end this webinar here, but I'm going to be reaching out to everyone afterwards with a bunch of additional resources as well as a link to a recording of this webinar. All right, so thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any follow-up questions that you didn't get to ask during this webinar, feel free to send them to support@umapped.com. Thanks so much.